I've returned. Only one day off. I got time today. And today's idea for the drawing, I had it for yesterday, and I started doing it yesterday, and then I thought, I'm not liking this, so I completely deleted it. So I brought it back from the dead. Pun intended. I think it definitely went a whole lot better than it did when I tried it yesterday. And I did a couple things differently, like turn the skull when before it was facing forward. And it was okay, but not as dynamic-y, I guess. And I did use a reference for the skull. I'm not pulling that out of nowhere. It was just a 3D model of one that I turned to be that correct angle I wanted. Even though, as you'll see, I spend a lot of time still trying to get it right. I also go with a very big change in contrast here with the white and the black. And I tried to make it more like it was a cloak of blackness. But it doesn't quite look like that. It's still interesting, but it's not like a body like I wanted it to be. It's just kind of a shape. Just a triangle. I also didn't really do eye sockets for the skull, like actual in-depth ones. It's because I wanted it to be like, oh, death is blind or whatever. Anything can die. So it doesn't care. But I still wanted that skull. Because, symbolism and all that. Skull is a free way to show death. Or, bones. Same with the color black. And this is one of those rare times that I use just straight up black and not some really dark blue or red. It is actual black this time. And actual white. Although I've been using white a lot more for highlights recently. So yeah, I spent a considerable amount of time on the skull. I didn't actually check how long I spent on it, but probably a good quarter of the time was just on the skull. Why'd they have to make it so difficult? Like, what the heck? I especially made it a little harder on myself because I kind of drew the top of the skull as if it was directly towards us rather than at an angle, which I fix right here by shrinking it down. And also I add like the back of the skull that you can see from under it, since it is supposed to be tilted up. And before I didn't have that, so it just looked a little off. A little goofy, if you will. Yep, still on the skull. Maybe it was like 33%? Like 1/3 of the time I spent just on the skull. That's not good statistics, time-wise. But hey, it works out in the end. I also forgot to add the little halo I planned on doing, which you could have seen in the sketch. Oops, my bad. I forgore. Trust me, I do more than the skull. Like, I'm gonna get there eventually. 50%. Oh my gosh, almost 50% just on the skull. Wow. And now I decided to do like a forest on the inside, just because I wanted the whole death shadow thing to be more symbolic. And like the image inside the body of the cloak was the actual thing going on. And when I originally tried to do this, planned to have a night riding a horse through. Not really doing much, but now for this one I added in like an actual interesting development of a blood trail going into these dark, spooky woods. And I tried to do pine trees with just my regular old rendering brush, but they look a little, not anemic, but they definitely look sad. I wish I had a better custom brush for this, but I wouldn't know how to make one. Or maybe just a better technique for doing it. I'll find out eventually. I'm also in my mind while doing this thinking of like old horror movie posters, like the really cheesy ones, the old B-movie slashers and their posters, just with how it's laid out. And I can imagine the "Into the Shadow of Death" plastered on it in big funny letters that kind of look like dripping blood. And it's kind of how I set up, compositionally wise, with like the big bad in the top and what's actually happening in the bottom. And I also kind of end up making it like a tarot card, but that's like at the way end when I add on a border for it, quote unquote border. It's like 10 lines, but it gets the job done. And because I wanted this to be like a really dark forest, I got to use only 2 colors of green mixed in with the black. And then like a really faded gray for the tree trunks. It is like I believe a yellowish green, but it's super desaturated. Just to look like the wood of a tree trunk. And now onto our probable hero. I wanted very high contrast here, so I just went with white. Also kind of magical. I give him a little glow. And I try to make it look like just a cloak, so I give him little feet. I lighten up the ground behind them just to like show where they walked, and that it is, they're glowing. I added those white lines going to the bottom just because I was trying to make it go against those black lines going up to the sky, and then I thought, that looks bad, so I got rid of them. 10 out of 10 thought process right there. At this point, I looked up and saw that that giant white space took up, in my opinion, way too much of the canvas. So I decided I should make it, more interesting up there. So why not make the forest up there too? Thinking compositionally. For sure. And luckily the way I did the pine trees at the bottom looks way better when I don't have to worry about the color, because I just used pure black, and I think it looks way better there than it does inside the actual forest. And I still thought that wasn't enough of a forest, so I tried to quickly add in back trees, because it doesn't look like it, but it took a while to do those trees, and my wrist was starting to hurt from doing it how I was doing it. So I did them really quick, decided it was not good, and then I cheated. I'm a little cheater. I used my digital art magic to just copy and paste the old ones and flip them. Yep. Little bit of cheating. And now here is where I get the idea for the frame. Quote unquote frame. This also makes it look more like a tarot card to me. Although it is a little wide for that. But who's keeping track? It's me. I try to fix up the pine trees just a little bit, just because I added some extra detail in like one tiny itty bitty spot and then nowhere else. And I try to make that little blood trail for the story of it a little more clear. And there's also a bunch of tiny red eyes that you can probably barely see. And that's all I have time to say. Goodbye, goodbye, bye. Have a good day, bye.